Good morning, afternoon, evening, next morning, all the things. How you guys doing today? Mr. Seep coming to you live or recorded or whatever from room 208 at Six Flags Marshall High School. That's right, Six Flags Marshall High School, because it's so fun. You would wait in line to get here. Today is September 15th. It's Tuesday. It's actually kind of nice. I have a little windy looking at the apple tree out my window, but not too bad. If you weren't at class today, you can watch this video to get caught up on what's going on, or figure out what we're talking about and what's happening. Kind of here's the plan for today. We're going to start off. We'll do the trivia for the day. We'll throw some trivia questions at you, see if you know the answer. Give you a little time delay, and then we'll run through the slides, do a quick review, give you some quick hints and helps about the assignment that's due on Thursday, and talk really briefly about the test that is on Friday. So really quick, the trivia. What is the only state whose two-letter postal code is two vowels? So the only state that's postal abbreviation is vowels only. The answer is Iowa. Second question. What is the diameter of a regulation basketball hoop? The answer is 18 inches. Number 3. What musical follows the rivalry between the Jets and the Sharks in New York City? The answer is West Side Story. All right, number 4. What color is the 3-ball in pool or billiards? The answer is red. And last but not least, a little bit of fictional character trivia. Who is associated with the address 221B Baker Street in London? The answer is Sherlock Holmes. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it's a British Broadcasting Corporation show called Sherlock, which I think is on Netflix, but I'm not positive. So, all right. So a couple quick things. First of all, we're going to have a test on Friday. And the way that we're going to work that is right before your class starts, I'm going to share the test with you, and you're going to have until the end of your class period to get it done and turned in. That's going to be on Friday. There'll be reminders of that throughout the week. The second thing I want to remind you guys of is yesterday, 9/14, I shared a ThingLink assignment with you guys called Reconstruction and Race in the South, a ThingLink assignment. And I posted the links that you would need in Classroom just in case the ThingLink wasn't working the way it was supposed to. Some helpful hints and reminders on that assignment. First of all, don't forget, answer your questions in full sentences. We're in high school now. You need to be able to answer in full sentences. You need to be able to be complete in your thinking. Okay. The second thing is restate the question. Don't start your answer with he, she, it, they, things like that. Restate the question so that I know what you're talking about. I need you to answer questions as if I didn't know what the question was. I should be able to read your answer and go, oh, I know this kid knows what they're talking about. So please do that. If you have any questions about any of that, please let me know. I am going to present here so we can get through the things that we are going to cover today. Or I did a dramatic hand raise and it didn't work. All right. Oh, cool. I stayed in the corner. This is new. I don't know what happened there. Hi, I'm still here. All right, so your goals for today. We're going to do a quick review of a couple of ideas from yesterday. I'll throw those things out to you at the end of the slide. And then we're going to look at one slide, and what I want you to be able to do at the end of this is be able to understand the final round or be able to describe the final round of the battle between Congress and Johnson. And then we're going to talk a little bit about Johnson's impeachment and what impeachment means. We're going to talk really briefly about the history of impeachment and the fact that it doesn't really mean what a lot of people think it does. Then I'll give you guys, obviously, you're on a different schedule, so we're going to give you some work time on your assignment, and we'll talk a little bit more about the test if we have time. Okay, so you don't need to write down this slide, but you want to get the next one, so please make sure and have a notebook available or run this back. Remember, the beauty of video is you can stop it, you can pause it, and you can rewind it. If I'm talking too fast, I apologize. Okay, so here we go. The important slide for the day. And I'm not even in the way of any of the words. Look at me being awesome. All right, so today we're going to talk about Johnson and Congress, the final round. A couple of quick review things from yesterday that are kind of important. Yesterday we talked about two big government words. We talked about veto. And a veto is basically where the president gets a law from Congress and says that he, and I'm saying he because they've all been men before, that he doesn't like the law and therefore he stamps it, veto, and it does not become a law at that point. Okay. Now, the second important term that we talked about is the idea of an override. Once the president vetoes a law, it goes back to Congress, and Congress has options on what to do with it. One of those options is something called an override. Now, an override is complicated. It doesn't happen very often. 2/3 of the members of Congress, two-thirds, have to vote to pass a law without the president's signature. That doesn't happen very often because getting 2/3 of people to agree on anything is next to impossible because, well, that's the nature of humans, including me. I am human, not an alien, not a lizard. Too pretty. Anyway, so a couple of important things on this slide that we're going to look at that could be on the test. First of all, in 1866, a number of the members of Congress, the Senate and the House of Representatives, are up for re-election. A lot of them are radical Republicans, and Johnson, who's a Democrat, doesn't like them. They disagree on too much. The purpose of Reconstruction, what should the rights of the freedmen be? Should the South get punished or not for the Civil War? They disagree too much. And so Johnson goes out and campaigns against the Republicans, especially the radical Republicans running for re-election. The campaign gets messy, it gets dirty. It's a lot like campaigns today. Rather than talking about what I can do to help the country, I talk about what the other guy or woman can't do or what they've done wrong. They call it mudslinging. I think if you've been watching, if you're trying to make America great again, or you're riding with Biden, you've already noticed that there's been a large amount of political ads out there. Sunday's football games were crazy. YouTube is nuts. You can't avoid them. Keep track of how many of them are positive versus negative. Regardless, Johnson was very negative in the way that he explained the Republicans to people, and it backfired on him. And the Republicans got a 2/3. That's important. Majority in Congress. So they were reelected plus some. Okay. Now that 2/3 is really important. And if you think back to our review, you would know why. Because 2/3 is the amount of people you need to override a presidential veto. This means Johnson can no longer successfully veto one of their laws. He can stamp, I don't like this. It goes back to them and they override him and the thing becomes a law. So literally Congress has the power to do whatever they want and Johnson can no longer do anything to slow them down. So to go back to one of our sets of original ideas, what were three of the major issues of Reconstruction? The first issue was who would be in control. Well, we know the answer now. The answer is the radical Republicans in Congress. And so Congress decides to put their own plan in place, their own, this is how it's going to go, idea of how things should work. Now, they call their plan, it gets called one of three things. It gets called radical Reconstruction, it gets called congressional Reconstruction, or military Reconstruction. I'm going to call it radical Reconstruction because that's what I'm used to. If you go on in American history, or you go on in college and they call it something different, it's all the same thing. Okay. So they decide to put their own plan in place. Now, I need you to look at the diagram that's down in the corner there below me, and I'll explain the plan to you as it goes. What the radical Republicans did is they decided to split the South up into 5 military districts. The districts are numbered. You don't need to know which state is in which one, but the idea is there. And so, for instance, Virginia was a district by itself because it had a large population. North Carolina and South Carolina were District 2. Florida, this is 4. 3 was Alabama, Georgia, and Florida. 4 is Arkansas and Mississippi. 5 is Texas and Louisiana. Notice Tennessee did not get put in there, and that's because if you remember yesterday's stuff, Tennessee approved the 14th Amendment and promised to have equal rights for the freedmen or former slaves. So they were not involved in the punishment. But the idea of these 5 districts is each district would have a general that was put in charge of it, that would act like a governor or a mini president in that area. And then the military would be used like the police. The military would keep the peace. They would make sure the law was being followed, make sure the 13th and 14th Amendment were being followed, and make sure that the black citizens of the South were not being abused, targeted, or having racist action toward them. That's really difficult. It's really hard to do because how do you protect someone 24/7, 365? You can't. But they try. So the military is all over the South. The governor, generals are in charge. Radical Republicans are happy. But in order to get your star back on the flag and your Congress people back in Congress and Reconstruction end for you, the military to leave your state, Congress said, you only have to do 3 things. Just 3 things. No problem. You do these 3 things, we leave. It's over. You're a state. Welcome back. You had to pass the 13th Amendment, which abolished slavery. You had to pass the 14th Amendment, which made all men citizens regardless of color, except for Native Americans. We'll get to that in the next unit. And number 3, I almost did 4 again. I don't know what's wrong today. The 15th Amendment, which would give black men the right to vote. Again, women, not you yet, because, well, America. I don't know what else to say there. We'll get to that later in later chapters. Obviously, Johnson vetoes the plan. Congress overrides him, and the 5 districts become a thing. Johnson decides to fight back. He keeps vetoing their laws, knowing that they're going to override him, but it just makes things take time. He also figures out that he can fire people. Now, Johnson can't fire senators and members of the House of Representatives because they're elected officials, but he can fire generals back then. And so what Johnson does is he fires the 5 generals of the military districts and names people who think like him to run those things below, okay? But then Senate fires those generals and names 5 new generals. And this is going to become a trend. It's going to keep going back and forth until Congress passes the Tenure of Office Act. Now, the Tenure of Office Act, I didn't define it on the slide, so you're going to want to write this down in your notes. The Tenure of Office Act is basically a law. You might want to pause and stop and rewind if you need to here. Please use that SPAR method. Stop, pause, and rewind. The Tenure of Office Act is a law that says the president can't fire any high-ranking officials without Senate's approval. So he can fire a general, but Senate has to approve it. And they're not going to do that because they're 2/3 radical Republicans and they hate Johnson. So therefore, blah, 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 blah. Now, there are 2 kinds of people when it comes to rules. There are people that follow them and don't question them. And then there are people that will try to manipulate the law. They'll break the law to see what's going to happen. They'll break the rule. They'll push the rule. They'll try to find the loophole. Johnson's the kind of guy who decided that he was going to break this law to see if they would do anything. And so he fires the Secretary of War. And in turn, he is impeached. Now, I'm not sure if you know what impeached means. And so here, we're going to run through a little history lesson on impeachment. 3 presidents. The camera's right. It's right there. It's right there. It's right there. 3 presidents have been impeached. Johnson obviously is 1 because we're talking about it. 2 is Bill Clinton. And 3 is the current president, Donald Trump. What impeached means is an elected official breaks the law and is put on trial for breaking that law. It does not mean that they are kicked out of office. It does not mean that. Okay. Richard Nixon was not impeached. He quit being president. He would have gotten impeached and voted out. Johnson and Clinton and Donald Trump were all impeached. They were put on trial. Senate acts as the jury. In all 3 cases, the president was found not guilty, meaning that they were found by the Senate to not have broken the law. Johnson is found not guilty by 1 vote, the slimmest of margins, the lowest possible amount that you can possibly be found not guilty by. If that person had voted the other way, he'd have been guilty, he'd have been kicked out of office. Johnson spends the last year of his presidency going along with whatever Congress asks him to do. He doesn't want to be the person in the history books that's the first president ever kicked out. So he stays in power, but not really. He becomes a yes man. He passes all their laws. He smiles. He waves. Princess wave, elbow, wrist, wrist. And so Congress moves along with all of their plans. The South obviously fights back. They don't want to go along with the 14th and 15th Amendment. And so Reconstruction has to go on further and further. Now, a couple quick reminders. as I escape out of the presentation. Don't forget about the assignment. Spend some time working on that, please. If you have questions, I am a chat, an email, a text away. Please feel free to use that ability. I want to help. I want to help as much as you need me to. Otherwise, I get kind of bored in the afternoon. So let me know if you need me. I'm right here. Again, do your best, and that's all I can ever ask of you. I'll give you guys feedback on your homework on how you can keep getting better. Don't forget the assignments due Thursday by midnight, and we're going to have a test on Friday. Hope to see you in class. If I didn't see you today, I hope I see you soon. All right, bye-bye.